Our first topic: reinstating common sense school discipline policies. Disorder in classrooms has reached a tipping point. In this segment, we examine how zero tolerance policies and overly permissive environments have both failed students, and what it means to return to practical, consistent, and values based discipline. We'll explore how structure, respect, and clear consequences can create safer, more productive learning environments for everyone involved. Let's dive in. So, I think the best thing is to start with
The executive order.
our executive order
Yeah.
because I've seen so much rhetoric and bullshit,
Hey, hey. Fake news.
fake news. I've seen so much fake news how they saying that Trump has signed an executive order for
to,
teachers
to beat the
to be
kids.
able to put their hands on the children physically and
Hmm.
beat them. Oh, that was worse than when they were saying he was taking away Black History Month or whatever. But as we like to do here first, we like to give you the black and white of everything, the actual executive order. So let's
Mhm.
look at that.
Reinstating common sense school discipline policies. This is an executive order that was published April 23rd, 2025. So the meat and potatoes of this is we want to focus on the purpose and policy where it says specifically what happened was in 2014, in January, the Department of Education and the Department of Justice jointly issued a Dear Colleague letter regarding school discipline. In that letter, the Department of Education and the Department of Justice explained that schools could be found to violate Title VI of the Civil Rights Act of 1964 and therefore could lose federal funding if their disciplinary decisions ran afoul of a newly imposed disparate impact framework under which race neutral disciplinary policies applied in an evenly handed manner may be improper if members of any racial groups are suspended, expelled, or referred to law enforcement at higher rates than others. The letter effectively required schools to discriminate on the basis of race by imposing discipline based on racial characteristics rather than an objective behavior alone. The consequences harm students and schools. It says a 2018 report from the Federal Commission on School Safety Commission noted evidence that because of the 2014 letter, and I quote, schools ignored or covered up rather than disciplined student misconduct in order to avoid any purported racial disparity in discipline numbers that might catch the eye of the federal government. As a result, students who should have been suspended or expelled for dangerous behavior remained in the classroom, making all students less safe. So that's basically what is in black and white.
There
And
you
the
have
goal
it.
here is just to re-implement common sense
We
discipline.
implement common sense, because first of all, I mean, we understand that the state um, of our youth and the level of disrespect that the teachers are having to deal with
On a
in these
daily
in these
basis.
classrooms is fucking ridiculous,
Atrocious.
atrocious. And something has to be done. We have to protect the teachers. We have to protect the students.
Hmm.
And so with the prior administration, they I think sometimes we get into like over analyzing things, and I think that's what the prior administration did. They were catering to some things they shouldn't have been catering to, by saying, oh, some disciplinary actions are being over proportionate by one race or the other. When in fact, it's going to be more people in a school that's predominantly black people. You're going to have more black students that are getting in trouble, or the ones that are getting in trouble are going to more likely be black.
Hmm.
Compared to a school where there's not as many black people, so therefore there's not as many black people getting in trouble, or whatever the case may be.
Hmm.
And so they try to safeguard this whole thing by saying like, oh, it seems as if that black people are being picked on or targeted, or
Yeah, that's what I'm getting. Yeah.
yeah, but when so therefore they put quotas and statistics in place. So Now it got
Backed
to
by the Civil Rights Act, I might add.
right. So then it got to the point where, all right, I got 49 kids acting up. 49 might be black, but if we get to 50 black kids, that's going to put us in a whole different category where we're being, you know,
It's a
charged,
disparity,
yeah, or
a
being,
racial disparity.
yeah, we're being charged with being, biased or prejudiced or any like whatever racial inequalities, whatever you want to label it. So it got to the point where so that kid, that 50th kid that was cutting up, whether um what no matter what the circumstances was, his behavior was going undocumented
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
and undisciplined
Hmm.
unapproached. It
Yeah.
was just they were letting them go, so they stayed in the classroom. Whether he needed to be suspended or expelled or whatever the case may be, wasn't nothing happening.
Hmm.
And so that sends a message to the kid that he could just keep on doing what he or she is doing. Let me be clear. Let me give some balance there.
Right.
He or she, you know what I'm saying? And I think that's just total garbage. I think the teacher should be able to discipline whoever needs to be disciplined.
Hmm.
It's almost like that's why they say do away with this DEI stuff. We'll give the job to the person that's qualified, and we'll give discipline to the person that's cutting up. There's no statistic. If it's more black people cutting up, I mean, there's more
At
of
a
us.
black school.
And even if it ain't a black school, more of us come from dysfunctional households.
Yes.
Hello, somebody. Because the problem is the parents aren't instilling the kids with discipline and respect for authority and the teachers. So when they get to school, they got this chip on their shoulder. They could say what they want. They could do what they want. They even have the audacity
Facts.
to stand up to the face of these teachers. Threaten them, tell
Hmm.
them shut up, fuck you, I ain't doing shit. Nope. It's like what in the world? Like now, how somebody supposed to work under those conditions? Because what I do know, anybody that chooses a life of education or the career of being a teacher is someone that has a kind heart and someone that cares about the youth and making sure they have what they need. They're not going into education because they want to hit somebody kids or they want to discriminate against one race or another. They usually go into these fields of education and teachers because they give a fuck.
Hmm.
And so therefore we got to protect them and we got to value them.
Hmm.
They need more money, number one, and they need to be able to control their classrooms as they see fit. So if five black people acting up and there's only one white person acting up, that don't mean we don't discipline the other two black people because that's going to give us over five in total. We only got to have five in total. You know what I mean? Or whatever the case may be. Them numbers are off, but you get what I'm saying. So I think this is something good, and once again, it's not giving them any right because no matter if you're a teacher or a student, you don't have your right. You don't have the right to put your hands on nobody, Mister Hunter and Carmelo Anthony. That you can't put your hands on people.
Keep your hands to
Keep
yourself.
your hands to yourself. Now I ain't saying whatever was justified or whatever case me, but both were wrong, and that was the egregious error. First was him putting his hands on somebody, and back to this point where if we teach our kids not to put their hands on people, and how to respect authority, I think the classrooms will be safer for students and teachers. And I don't understand what's the whole gripe about this bill. I just don't get it.
Another element I just thought about as you were speaking was when we don't discipline the children, it undermines the teacher's ability to manage the classroom
Exactly.
because now the other students see that there's no consequences for poor behavior.
Hmm.
And we know that a teacher who already is most likely in a classroom that is overpopulated has now an additional burden put on top of him or her because now she has to deal with students who may not have been unruly, but now see that there's no consequences for them being unruly. So now they also start being unruly.
Yeah. Oh, you ain't say nothing to Kim. Oh well, shit. Well, fuck you too. I ain't doing it either. Well, I'm pulling my phone out. Oh shit, I ain't. I ain't standing up. I'm not sitting down. I'm not going here. I'm not going to be quiet. You know what I'm saying? You give them the pass to be disrespectful and
So
and not listen.
so now what was supposed to be history class has now turned into the teacher going from student to student to student trying to manage their behavior, and it's taking up the whole period. And let's just say it could be 3 students
Mm-hmm.
in a class of 30, we'll say. However, now, because of these 3 students' unruly behavior, the other 27 students don't get their history lesson for the day because the teacher had to spend the bulk of the class managing these 3 students' behavior because
Mm-hmm.
these 3 students know that there's no consequences for their behavior.
And so now with this law or with this executive order, those 3 students can be bounced up out of there, get up out of here, go to the principal office, go to the in-school detention.
Mm-hmm.
You're suspended, you're expelled, whatever, and they can do that without having to be reprimanded by administration because this is the third black person you sent to the office today.
Facts.
Like if it's 3 of them black motherfuckers fucking up, all 3 of the asses go down
Get
there
out.
and get suspended. Just like if it's white people cutting up, Hispanics or anybody else, whoever is cutting up, they get disciplined. You know what I mean? I just
Well, to bring up the point you made previously, how the kids aren't receiving the discipline at home,
hmm
and discipline begins at home. In order for us to maintain some level of classroom management, then the kids have to come to school equipped with common sense discipline.
right.
And if the parent isn't instilling that common sense discipline in the child, then it is just going to become that much more difficult for the school system because now again most of the quote unquote instruction time has to be applied to managing the behavior of this small group of kids who are unruly and undisciplined.
Because at that point you're not dealing with students, you're dealing with delinquents.
Yes.
And that's a whole different way. Like now you have to take on the mindset of a correctional officer
Right.
and,
Right.
and not a teacher in the classroom. Now you're a correctional officer in the prison.
Facts.
You
That's
know
a
what I'm
good way of
saying?
putting it. That's a good way of putting it.
Let's check out this video. Somebody else has a good way of putting it.
That was actually a good way of putting it. Correctional officer, because that's exactly what exactly they have to become from. They go from being a teacher to a correctional officer.
And then even the fact that they're a correctional officer. Now, before this, you were a correctional officer without the ability to restrain the prisoner. That's what they was. That's why he had to like. And if you got to put that motherfucker in a poly grip because they in your face talking about they gonna fuck you up, go ahead and do what you gotta do. That motherfucker threw a phone at you, threw a book at you, threw a desk at you. Fuck him. Do what you gotta do.
Protect yourself.
Protect yourself and the integrity of your classroom.
Right.
It is not the teachers. It is not the school. The school and the teachers are supporting cast. The habits that they need to succeed in school are built at home first, with the parent first. If your kid is failing middle school, failing high school, but coming to school with Jordans, has an Xbox, a PlayStation 5, hanging out with friends, got a bicycle, he's popping wheelies down the street, he's got a brand new cell phone with Instagram and TikTok and Snapchat, but he's failing middle school, that is a parent thing.
I mean, there you go. He said it. Like, you know what I realized listening to that video? There's no communication between the school and the home no more.
No.
And you know who finagled that? The student. The student was able to finagle the communication between home and the school because school kind of moves with technology, so to a certain degree.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? And the parent at home 9 times out of 10 doesn't.
Yes.
because you're being a parent. So you
Yes.
know you in the I got to work. I'm working, doing this, paying the bills, do the. You know I'm doing what works. You know
Yes.
I don't have time to be trending with technology and devices that's coming out. And so what they did in the school, the way grades are reported, the way the behavior reports are done, is all computer.
Mm-hmm.
You know, input it, do a computer, and you know, there's different things you got to go to different websites or different links or different apps that you could download or you know access and see what's going on with the kid or see the notes that the teacher is writing. But and the kids know that
Mm-hmm.
the kids know exactly how to get their grades. They know exactly where the grades at. The parents at home like I ain't seen no report card yet. Now the student know, oh, report card nowadays, mom, you got to go to this site or just download this app. And so the kids fucking with the parents. Oh, they must ain't send no report cards this time. I don't think they send the report cards till June.
Right. 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 Right.
Like you know, there's a gap in the communication where it's allowing the student to play both sides against the middle, so to speak.
Mm-hmm.
You know, to alleviate the parent getting the information they need about the status or the behavior of their child,
Mm-hmm.
and you know, and the teacher is not following through because they think once they put the grades or the attendance or the behavior into this computer or this system, um, that the parent is automatically on the same level and getting it
Mm-hmm.
in the same time that's fashion that they putting it out
Mm-hmm.
there, and it's not because there's too much space for the kid to to manipulate it.
As the gentleman said, it all begins at home,
Yeah, very much
and
so.
the parent is the main support, and the school is the supporting
The
cast.
supporting cast, right?
But when the parent is choosing to be the quote unquote supporting cast and expecting the school system to be the main cast, we run into these types of problems
Yes,
because the
indeed.
parent is purposely not doing their part to instill the discipline in the child so
Mm-hmm.
that when it does leave their household and it does have to go and be in this school environment, it understands, it being the child, how to conduct themselves from a
Mm-hmm.
behavioral perspective. But since they was able to run rampant at home without any sort of boundaries or structure, to your point, if that never gets harangued or corralled in a sense,
Harangue. That's a good
right?
one.
I was trying to say corralled. If that never gets corralled, then again, we see what we're seeing.
Mm-hmm.
Where again, the students feel that they can step to a teacher, they feel they can swing on a teacher, they feel they can get into full out fist fights in class with their peers
Mm-hmm.
in the name of my mama said can't nobody tell me this, and if I feel this.
Mm-hmm. And I think I said prior, they see their parents' behavior in the streets. So the parent has no rapport or respect for the law or
Mm-hmm.
cops. And a lot of these are single female parent household, mind you. You know, because as black men, we don't have the privilege of cussing out police officers because we
Facts.
get killed.
Right.
But the women do.
Mm-hmm.
You know, they rant and rave with police. They at the Dollar Tree arguing with the cashier. They
Mm-hmm.
at the restaurant arguing with the waitress. They down there on the phone with the person that they owe money to. You know, mad at them because they calling trying to collect their money. So they see this behavior more often than not, and so you just mimic. You know who your parent is, and then the moment you think you are grown enough to say what you want to say, you're really not saying what you want to say. You're only saying what's been taught and passed down to you
Yes.
from your upbringing, which is at home.
Yes. So the network of conversations, the always already listening. And if in the child's already listening, always already listening, to your point, if it's this language of can't nobody tell me nothing,
Mm-hmm.
you know, who are you?
Mm-hmm.
In a sense, this rebellion against authority, then what makes the parent think that that's not the type of behavior the child's going to take into the real world?
Exactly. You're gonna think that's right. That's how you're supposed to be.
Because I see my mama doing it like that. I see my daddy doing it like that.
That's all
So
I
this is
said.
how I have to do it like that.
That's how you're supposed to be.
Hmm.
Well, fuck you, teacher. I don't gotta listen. No, I ain't doing nothing. Like, and then you know, which entails usually most kids that are acting up at home. I mean, acting up in school come from a household where there's like no love, no structure, no discipline, no guidance,
Total dysfunction.
total chaos. And then that just, you know, translate to when they get in school. When they
Hmm.
come to school, they leave out the house, and and it's like, oh well, I don't got to do nothing. I'm not held to any schedule at home. I'm not held to any responsibility at home. I'm
Hmm.
not held to any chores at home. I'm not held to any
No responsibilities,
no structure at
no
home.
structure.
I'm not held to any levels of discipline. I don't have to make any time management at home, and I don't have to make sure before I get on the game, dishes are done, trash is out, clothes is ready out for the next day. You took the dog
I'm
out.
being catered to. So why wouldn't I not expect that from the teacher, from the administration, and
Police
and
officers
any other authority
and
figure I
any other
cross paths
authority
with? Because the
with,
authority figures that I'm used to do this for me. So
and
y'all
it,
need to do this for
and
me.
that's a big problem.
Big problem.
We're creating monsters, and that is a huge, huge problem. I got another video for you folks. Let's check this one out.
If you have children, your main job is to raise your children to be good adults, right? Want to see how you're doing? Watch your child interact with other children. How do they act? How do they respond? Remember, teach your child to be a good person, but also how to be a really good friend to other children. Because it's really sad, but it is extremely true. A lot of children don't go home to a place of love.
Yeah, so he had it too. Like if you want to gauge on how your kids are acting at school, gauge on how they act or interact with their friends on the block, or their cousins when their cousins and stuff come over. Like, pay attention. Let's start paying attention to the dynamics and the interpersonal tendencies that kids are displaying when they're around other kids.
Because it's not just cute. Whatever they're doing, it's
No,
not
but
cute.
it's a full insight to how they act when you're not around.
100%.
And
100%.
so if you just eavesdropping on them and just hear with the conversation, like a lot of kids are having, a lot of parents are having awakenings or whatever you want to call it, because they listening to the kids on these Call of Duty games and all these things,
Facts.
and they're like blown away because they didn't know their kid could cuss like the way they're cussing. And with those games, you're able to play with somebody that's somewhere else in another state, another country, somewhere else, and everybody, and they on there like, what the fuck, motherfucker, da, da, da." And the parents are like, my child's only 6. I didn't know they could cuss like that. That's what I'm saying. You got to tap in, even though the days have changed, the times have changed, where the kids are not outside, and the girls are playing double dutch, and the boys are building go karts and driving down the driveway and making ramps. They kind of shifted to being in house, and they're all on this social media vice, whether it be gaming or Instagram or something like that. But you got to find a way to tap into what they're saying and
Hmm.
what they're doing, so you can gauge who they are and who they're becoming.
Their true identity. Because the little vision of Timmy that you see in your mind, where he's this innocent, fun loving child, is the polar opposite of who
Oh
his
yeah,
true
they know how to
identity
play you.
is.
Oh, they know how to play the shit out you. Like, I mean, we all did. We all were young and kids, and it was our mission as a kid to pull the wool over on our parents.
Hmm.
I don't even know. I put shit in the bed and put sheets over it, made it look like I was in the bed, sleep. I did
Facts.
all types of shit. My mom would tell you, like, I was a handful,
Piece of work, as they used to
to
say.
say the least, right?
So all in all,
As she would say, I painted my fucking ass.
so all in all, ladies and gentlemen, it begins. Common sense discipline begins at home.
Yes.
If you aren't putting the work in to instill that discipline into your child, the last people you want is law enforcement.
Yeah.
So it's in your best interest to do it, even if it makes you feel bad. And on that note, I've noticed that when these young men and young women are coming from these single parent households, specifically where the mom is the head, a lot of mothers genuinely feel bad about disciplining their children.
I don't know why.
It, in some instances, from how they explain it, it brings them true pain.
Mm.
And so they would rather just write off the behavior or overlook the behavior
But
as a one off.
let me throw some balance to the word discipline. When I say discipline your child, I'm not necessarily saying you have to beat them
Of
or
course not.
abuse them. Abuse them. Discipline is not synonymous with putting your hands on a child. We have to be smarter than the kids and know how to get to them. We know what affects them. Discipline is all about getting to the root of what you want and denying that and withholding it for your behavior to change or to align with what I want you to align with. It's not necessarily beating them and torture them. They locking them in the basement and not feeding them for 3 months. No, we ain't talking about that. We're talking about you gotta be smart. You gotta understand what their interests are, what they're passionate about. So if you got a child that likes, going to the mall with their friends and shopping, and it's like, oh, you can't do that. I see that you got a D in math, and you missed 3 days of school, and it's like you've been late, and I got this letter from the teacher how you don't have any self control. You're disrupting the class on a regular basis. No, you ain't going to the skating party. No, you're not going to the movie theater. No, you're not going down there to stay at your good friend house.
Hmm.
You're not going to her sweet 16 or her champagne party. You ain't going because you need to understand that you are responsible for how you act, and that's what they used to always tell us. Like the kid is always a reflection of the parent.
100%.
And so that's why, our parents took that shit seriously and our grandparents when you were somewhere acting up because you making me look like I ain't doing what the fuck I'm supposed to do. And in the modern day cases, the parents aren't doing what they supposed to do, but nonetheless, something has to be done. Because we can't let these delinquents become full grown adults. Because then you have, more and more negative statistics in society.
Now you go from having child delinquents to adult delinquents.
Yep.
But the consequences for adult delinquents are significantly harsher
Yeah, very much
than being
harsher.
a child delinquent.
And some of the tendencies and things that an adult delinquent do are more harsh.
Hmm.
You know what I'm saying? Now we're just talking about as a kid, you acting up in the classroom. Now, as an adult, you're acting up on the block at work. You going postal. You want to shoot up a place. You want to rob everybody. You know what I mean? You want to give everyone a fee. You know what I mean?
Right.
It's just crazy. It's just crazy. But the point we're making is we have to make sure the teachers, the kid is in school, the kid is with the teacher more than they're with the parent these days.
Actively.
Actively.
Yes.
Yeah, because you figure 8, 16, 24 hours in a day. 8 hours of that day you're in school.
Hmm.
They say you got another 8 hours where you're supposed to be sleep, resting.
That's 16.
Right? So you only have 8 hours where you will be with your parents or your family or whatever the case may be. Out of that 8 hours, you got to commute from work or school. Boom, boom, boom.
Got to get ready.
You got to get ready. You got to wash. You got to do all that. You got to bathe. You got to get dressed. You got to eat things like that. Prepare meals or whatever the case may be. Do homework. Do whatever the case may be. So that only really gives you maybe what 4 hours.
Hmm.
Of you being, and then within that 4 hours, you're exhausted in that 4 hours. In that 4 hours, you don't want to be bothered with nothing. Chat or child,
Hmm.
chick or child. You don't want to worry, but you don't care what them dogs doing. You don't care what them kids doing. You don't care what your spouse doing. You tired. You just need a moment. Like shit, because tomorrow I gotta do it all over again. But yeah.
Yep.
So, in wrapping that up, let's just be mindful of the kids we're sending out to these schools and classrooms. We have a major role. It really we're the front line, and it starts with us. And if we do our job right, no president or no government official will ever have to implement any common sense practices because everyone will be practicing common sense and everyone will be acting accordingly.
100%.
And so they're on these measures and these precautions only being implemented because something's not right.
Hmm.
There's a weak link in the chain somewhere. And and I challenge the parents to step up to the plate and take accountability.
Discipline begins at home.
Facts.